The Intergalactic Culture Fair was the biggest event Earth had ever hosted. It was held on the global skyport, a floating station high above the Pacific Ocean. Thousands of aliens from dozens of planets had come to learn about Earth's cultures, share their own, and build peaceful friendships. Lights danced in the sky, strange alien ships hovered above the clouds, and music from across the galaxy echoed across the skyport. Jake Callahan didn't expect to be a part of anything important. He was just a tech assistant. His job was to check the sound systems, make sure the projectors worked, and stay out of the way. He was 28, liked bad jokes, and never took life too seriously. With messy brown hair, jeans that were too worn out, and a lazy smile, Jake didn't look like someone who might change the galaxy. But fate has a funny way of choosing people. That day, Jake was helping set up the Human Cultural Booth. A huge stage was built to show off Earth's art, music, and traditions. A few scientists and historians were preparing their presentations. Jake was fixing a stubborn cable when the crowd began to gather. The camera drones floated nearby, ready to live stream to millions of viewers across dozens of planets. The human host was late, and the booth looked a little too quiet. Jake sighed and stretched. Then, with a grin, he stood up and shouted into the microphone, "Who wants to marry me?" It was just a joke, something to make the crowd laugh and fill the silence. People chuckled. A few humans clapped. One alien blinked its 7 eyes and looked confused. Jake laughed at himself. "No takers?" he added. "Guess I'll try again next year." But then, something happened. The microphone hissed, and the screen above the stage suddenly flickered. Everyone went silent. The feed, which had been showing smiling faces and colorful dances, turned black. Then came a voice, cold, calm, beautiful. "Accept." Gasps echoed around the skyport. The screen lit up again, but this time it showed a spaceship. Not one of the ones already docked. This one was different. It looked like black crystal, shaped like a crescent moon, glowing with soft, red lights. It hovered just outside Earth's orbit, and it was moving fast. Jake stared, mouth open. "Wait. What?" the voice continued. "Your words were spoken under the open stars, witnessed by the ancient network. Under Treaty 799, a proposal heard and accepted forms a bond of honor. I, Vireth Noctar of House Umbra, accept." Everyone started talking at once. The human officials looked panicked. The alien delegates murmured in surprise. The AI assistant tried to explain something about ancient protocols and translation systems. Jake blinked. "That was a joke," he muttered. But no one was laughing now. 2 hours later, the world had changed. News spread across Earth. An alien woman, an Ankaran, had accepted a human's proposal. And not just any alien. The Ankarans were mysterious, powerful, and rarely seen. They lived on dark worlds far from Earth. Some called them energy drinkers. Others said they lived for thousands of years and could read minds. Jake sat in a private room surrounded by nervous government officials and translation bots. His stomach was full of butterflies, and his mind was spinning. A hologram floated above the table. It showed the ship of Vireth Noctar, now slowing down near Earth's orbit. Earth's leaders had tried to stop it from coming, but galactic law was clear. A marriage proposal accepted under the stars was recognized by the ancient Pax. "This is insane," Jake said. "I was just trying to fill time. I didn't mean it." The UN ambassador rubbed her temples. "We understand that. But the problem is, they did." One of the alien advisors leaned forward. "The Ankarans are serious about honor. If we break this agreement, they may see it as betrayal." Jake laughed nervously. "Can't we just talk to her?" "You'll have to," the ambassador said. "She's landing in 1 hour." The skyport was quiet when the ship arrived. It moved without sound, without flame, and without visible thrusters. It simply glided into position above the central landing pad. Cameras recorded every second. Billions watched from Earth, curious, nervous, excited. Jake stood at the edge of the landing zone, surrounded by guards and diplomats. His heart beat like a drum. Then the ship opened, a long ramp unfolded, and from the shadows she appeared. Vireth. Noctar was tall, graceful, and unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes deep red like stars in the dark. She wore a long robe made of shimmering black fabric that seemed to move like mist. Her hair floated around her like it had no weight. She didn't walk. She glided. She stopped. In front of Jake, looked him in the eyes, and spoke softly. "You called. I have come." Jake swallowed hard. "I didn't think anyone was listening." She tilted her head. "A promise made in jest still echoes in the stars. And you, human, have been heard." Everyone waited for Jake's answer. The world held its breath. He gave a weak smile. "Well, hi, I guess." Her expression didn't change. "Greetings, husband-to-be." And that's how Jake Callahan, tech assistant and part-time comedian, accidentally proposed to a noble alien vampire. And she said yes. Jake Callahan stood like a statue as Vireth Noctar, the alien who called herself his bride, glided across the landing pad. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She didn't seem nervous at all. Jake, on the other hand, felt like he might faint. The crowd behind him stayed quiet. The guards didn't move. The cameras kept rolling. Even the translator drone floating above them paused for a moment, unsure what to say next. Vireth finally stopped 2 steps in front of Jake. "I am Vireth of House Umbra," she said softly. "Daughter of the bloodline eternal, keeper of the Nightstone, bound to you by sacred pact." Jake looked at her, unsure what to say. She was beautiful in a strange way, like a statue carved from moonlight and shadow. Her voice was calm but strong. Her eyes, they made him feel like she was looking into his soul. Jake scratched the back of his neck. Hi, I'm Jake, from, house apartment, keeper of the coffee machine." A few diplomats behind. Him groaned quietly. But something unexpected happened. Vireth blinked, once, and then, just slightly, the corner of her mouth turned upward. Was she smiling? Later, inside the Skyport's grand welcome hall, Vireth sat across from Earth's top leaders. Jake sat beside her, still trying to understand what was going on. "This is a misunderstanding," one official said carefully. "Jake didn't mean to propose. It was a joke. Human humor is often silly." Vireth turned her head slowly. "It was said clearly, in the presence of witnesses, and under the light of the stars. In our traditions, that is no small matter." Jake leaned forward. "But I didn't even know your people existed. How could I mean to ask you?" Vireth answered calmly. "Intent does not always shape destiny. Sometimes destiny answers for you." The room went quiet. Another official tried a new angle. "Surely there is some way to politely decline the arrangement?" Vireth's red eyes narrowed. "To do so would insult the honor of my house and the laws of the ancient alliance. Do you wish to break your word to the stars?" The humans looked at each other. Breaking the pact might not just cause a diplomatic problem, it could offend a powerful species. No one wanted to start a conflict over a joke. Jake raised his hand slowly. "Can I ask something?" Vireth looked at him. "Why did you accept?" He asked. "Of all the people in the galaxy, why me?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Because no one from your world has dared to speak so boldly, and because I saw curiosity in your words, not fear. That is rare." Jake blinked. "So you liked the joke?" "I liked the spirit behind it," she replied. "And now, I wish to learn more." That night, Jake was given a private room near the alien quarters. He couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts ran through his head. He stared out the window at the stars. "What have I gotten myself into?" he whispered. A soft knock came at the door. Jake turned and froze. Vireth stood there, silent as always. "I do not sleep at night," she said. "May I enter?" Jake nodded slowly. She stepped in, her robe brushing the floor like flowing ink. "I wanted to speak without others listening," she said. "Do you truly wish to reject the bond?" Jake sighed. "I don't know, I mean, it's crazy. I barely know you. We're from different worlds. I'm just a guy with a toolbox. You're you." Vareth sat down on the edge of a low chair. "True. But do you wish to know me?" Jake looked at her. She didn't speak like the others. Her words were heavy but honest. There was no trick, no pressure. "Just a strange offer?" "I guess I do," he said. "But I'm scared," Vareth nodded. "Fear is natural. But I did not come to trap you. I came because something in your voice called to me. I only ask that we learn together." Jake smiled, slightly. "So, you're okay with taking it slow?" She tilted her head. "We do not rush the stars. We follow their path." The next morning, news spread across the skyport and Earth. Jake Callahan had not rejected the alien proposal. Instead, he and Vareth had agreed to take part in a special tradition called the courtship walk, a slow bonding process observed by Ankaran nobles and their chosen partners. The whole galaxy seemed interested now. News feeds showed pictures of Jake and Vareth walking side by side through the skyport's gardens, eating meals together. Well, Jake ate, Vareth only drank a glowing blue liquid, and asking questions about each other's cultures. Vareth learned how to play the piano. Jake learned how to greet someone in Ankaran without accidentally challenging them to a duel. The more time they spent together, the more curious they became. Vareth showed Jake a small crystal that let her see into memories. She offered to share one with him. Carefully, Jake touched the crystal and saw a vision. A lonely girl standing under a silver sky, watching two moons rise. "That was me," she whispered, "before I became a keeper of the bloodstone, before I had a title. I was alone." Jake looked at her. "You're not alone now." But not everyone was happy about the match. In a dark corner of the skyport, 3 shadowy figures watched the news feeds. "She should not bond with a human," one said. "It breaks the old ways," another hissed. "And it gives Earth too much favor," the third added. They vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only one message carved into a wall: "Bloodless shall rise." Jake Callahan was beginning to get used to being followed by cameras. Everywhere he went, walking beside Vareth, drinking coffee, even just waving at kids watching from Earth, someone recorded him. He never expected to be famous, especially not for accidentally proposing to an alien. Still, life was strangely peaceful. Vareth was quiet, but she always listened. She asked questions that made Jake think about his life, his dreams, and his world. They talked late into the night, sometimes sitting near the skyport's windows, watching stars drift slowly by. But the peace didn't last. One morning, Vareth entered the Earth delegation hall with serious news. Her steps were fast. Her robe moved like dark smoke. She looked calm, but Jake had spent enough time with her now to notice she was worried. "There has been a threat," she said. "A message was sent to my ship. It came from a hidden source." The room fell silent. "A threat?" the human ambassador asked. "To who?" Vireth's eyes glowed faintly red. "To Jake." Jake blinked. "Me?" She nodded. It was brief, 5 words. "The bond must not happen." A diplomat leaned forward. "Who would send that?" Vireth looked toward the window. "I suspect the Bloodless Court." Jake frowned. "You mentioned them once. Who are they?" "They are Ankarans," Vireth said. "But they have left the old ways. They reject the traditions, the bonds, the peace. They live in secret places and speak of power, not honor. Sounds like space troublemakers, Jake muttered. Virith gave him a small look. They are more dangerous than they seem. Security around Jake doubled. Special shields were placed in his room. Guard drones followed him quietly, disguised as floating lamps. Even Virith seemed more alert. Jake didn't like hiding, but he didn't argue. Instead, he focused on something else, the strange changes he was feeling. For the past few nights, Jake had been having vivid dreams. In them, he stood in ancient cities with twin moons above. He saw faces he didn't know, places he had never been. He also noticed that when Virith was near, he felt calmer. Sometimes he could almost guess what she was about to say. He asked her about it one evening. "It is the start of the bond," she explained. "Even if we have not completed the ritual, the connection has begun. A piece of my presence rests with you now." Jake sat back. "So, we're connected already?" "Partly," Virith said. "The bond grows slowly, but once complete, it becomes strong. We will be able to feel each other across light years." Jake thought for a moment. "That sounds kind of amazing, but also a little scary." Virith gave the smallest smile. That is how many great things begin. A few days later, the Galactic Council invited Jake and Virith to a special meeting. They wanted to discuss the future of the Earth-Ankaran alliance. The meeting would take place on the moon base Aurora, a peaceful station used for diplomatic talks. Jake had never been to the moon before. As their shuttle landed, he looked out the window. The surface was bright and dusty, with small towers rising, like silver trees. Ships from many planets were parked outside. Flags of different worlds waved gently under artificial wind. Inside, the council room was shaped like a circle. Each seat was curved, built for many body types, tall, short, wide, or floating. A translator drone hovered in the center. The council leader, a wise being called Tharn Oral, welcomed them. "Today," he said, "we witness something new, a bond between human and Ankaran. It may be a step toward greater peace, or it may bring danger." Jake stood up nervously. Thanks for having me. I'm just a guy who made a joke. But I've learned something. Virith isn't just an alien. She's a person. And we've found something real. I didn't expect it, but I won't run from it." There was silence. Then Virith rose. Her voice was smooth and strong. "Jake Callahan may not be trained in our ways, but he has something rare. Honesty. That is why I accepted him. That is why I believe in this bond." A few members of the council nodded. Others stayed quiet. Tharn spoke again. "Then the final decision rests with the trial of unity. If you pass it, your bond will be recognized by all major systems." Jake blinked. "Trial of what now?" Back on the skyport, Jake read the details of the trial of unity. It was an ancient tradition, used when two beings from different worlds chose to bond. The trial was not about strength, but about trust, courage, and heart. It was designed to test if the bond was real. There were 3 parts: the mirror walk, the memory flame, and the duel of truth. Jake looked at the scroll, then at Virith. "I'm not trained for this," he said. "No one is," she replied. "That is the point." He let out a breath. "Okay then, let's do it." Meanwhile, far away from Earth, deep in a forgotten asteroid field, a group of robed Ankarans stood around a dark circle. They were the bloodless court. "The human must not pass the trial," one said. "He weakens our name." Another whispered, "He must be stopped." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, taller than the others, with eyes like burning coal. "I will go," he said. "Let the human come to the trial. I will face him in the duel of truth." The others bowed their heads. He will not leave alive. Jake Callahan stood in front of a tall, silver door. On the other side was the beginning of the trial of unity, a test that would decide whether he and Vareth could be officially bonded. If he passed, their connection would be honored across the galaxy. If he failed, everything could fall apart. Jake took a deep breath. "I'm ready," he whispered. Vareth stood beside him, calm as ever. She touched a glowing gem on her bracelet, and the silver door slowly opened. Inside was a round chamber filled with soft white light. A voice echoed from the air. It belonged to the Trial Keeper, an ancient machine intelligence that served the Galactic Council. Candidate Jake Callahan. You will face 3 tests. You may not bring weapons. You may not ask for help. You may only bring truth. Jake gave a nervous nod. Okay. Here we go. The first test. The mirror. Walk Jake entered a long hallway with shining walls. Each wall was made of smooth crystal like a mirror. But these mirrors didn't just reflect his image. They showed versions of himself. In one mirror, he was rich and powerful. In another, he was old and alone. In another, he wore a soldier's armor covered in dirt. Each reflection spoke to him. You could have had more if you worked harder. You wasted your time with silly dreams. You're not good enough for her. Jake felt his heart beat. Faster. He didn't want to hear these things. But he kept walking. The reflections got louder, shouting doubts and fears. He nearly turned back. Then he remembered Vareth's voice. We do not rush the stars. We follow their path. He stopped walking, faced a mirror, and said aloud, I'm not perfect, but I'm real. I'm trying. Suddenly, the mirrors turned, clear. The hallway filled with light. He had passed the first test. The second test, the memory flame. In the next chamber, Jake saw a small blue flame floating above a silver bowl. The Trial Keeper's voice returned. Place your hand above the flame. You will relive a memory, not from your mind, but from your bond. Jake looked confused. From Vareth's memory? Yes. He slowly reached out. As his hand hovered over the flame, the world around him changed. He was no longer in the chamber. He stood on a dark, quiet world. 2 moons shone above. The air was cool and still. In front of him was a small girl, young Vareth. She sat alone on a stone step, holding a glowing crystal. Her face was serious, but her eyes were sad. She looked up at the sky. No one sees me, she whispered. They only see the name, the title, the bloodline. Jake watched her. He felt her loneliness like it was his own. Suddenly, the young Vareth turned and looked straight at him. Do you see me? She asked. Jake didn't hesitate. Yes, I see you. The vision faded. The chamber returned. The flame vanished. He had passed the second test, the third test, the duel of truth. This chamber was larger than the others, a wide, open space with soft light falling from above. In the center stood a tall Ankaran man with a long black cloak and sharp, glowing eyes. He bowed slightly. I am Kale Voss of the Bloodless Court, he said. I challenge your truth. Jake looked around. So, we fight now? Not with fists, Kyle replied. We speak. You answer. But if you lie, or if you are weak, this duel will end you. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward. Trial Keeper's voice echoed again. Begin! Kale's voice was cold. Do you seek Vareth because of fame? Jake shook his head. No, I didn't even know her name when I joked. Do you fear her? Jake smiled a little. Yes, but I respect her more. Do you love her? The question hit Jake like a wave. He thought of her voice, her eyes, the way she listened, the way she never forced anything, but also never backed away. Jake looked up. Yes, I think I really do. Kale stared at him. The air went still. Then, Kale reached up, removed his cloak, and stepped back. "You have passed," he said. But then, without warning, he pulled a sharp crystal dagger from his sleeve and lunged forward. Jake froze. Before the blade could reach him, a red streak of light flashed between them. Virith. She moved faster than Jake had ever seen. Her hand blocked the blade with her bracelet, and a soft pulse of energy threw Kyle across the room. Guards rushed in. Lights turned red. The chamber shook with alarms. The trial keeper's voice boomed. "Violation of the trial! The challenger has broken the code!" Kyle was pulled away by peacekeepers. Jake looked at Virith. "You saved me." Virith turned to him. "You had already saved yourself." Later, back on the skyport, the Galactic Council made their decision. Tharn Oral stood before a great hall filled with humans, Anchorans, and many others. Jake Callahan has passed the trial of unity. The bond is real. The alliance shall be honored. The crowd clapped. Some cheered. Others watched in quiet respect. Jake looked at Virith. She nodded. "You did well, Jake." Jake smiled. "So, does this mean we're officially a thing?" Virith's eyes glowed softly. "Yes, but the path ahead is still long." "I can walk it," Jake said. "As long as you walk with me." Far away, in a quiet chamber, the leaders of the Bloodless court watched the trial recordings. Their plan had failed, but their anger had grown. He passed. But the bond is not yet sealed. We still have time. One leader leaned forward. "If we cannot stop the bond, then we will take him." The trial of unity was over. Jake had passed. The Galactic Council had approved the bond, and the news of a human and Anchoran joining together spread across hundreds of planets. Some called it the beginning of a new era. Some called it a mistake, and others called it a target. Jake and Virith stood together in the skyport's garden dome, where bright alien flowers bloomed under artificial sunlight. The place had become their quiet corner, far from reporters, diplomats, and curious guests. "Coo, you ever miss your home?" Jake asked. Virith looked up at the stars through the clear dome above. "Sometimes, but I do not miss being alone." Jake smiled. "Good. Because Earth makes really good company. We have music, coffee, and silly jokes." Virith gave him a rare, soft smile. "You are all three of those things, Jake," he laughed. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." Just then, her bracelet blinked red. She looked down at it, and her smile faded. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Someone tried to access my private ship systems," she said, "from inside the skyport." Jake frowned. "Is it the bloodless court again?" Virith's eyes narrowed. Yes, they are not finished. That evening, security around the couple was increased. Guards stood outside their chambers, and drones scanned every hallway. The Galactic Council promised full protection, but danger was already near. Inside the walls of the skyport, hidden in a dark ventilation space, a small group of cloaked figures moved silently. They wore silver masks and used old Anchoran tech that bent light, hiding their shapes from cameras. Their leader whispered into a comm crystal. "Tonight, we separate the human from the princess. Quietly, quickly." Jake couldn't sleep. He walked the quiet hall near his room, thinking about everything that had happened. A few weeks ago, he was a simple tech guy. Now he was a future ambassador, partner to an alien noble, and a symbol of peace. It felt strange, but also right. As he turned the corner, he noticed something odd. 2 guards who were supposed to be standing by the door were gone. Then a sharp sound echoed, a soft crack, like electricity. Jake stepped back. "Hello?" Suddenly, 3 figures appeared from the shadows. Before he could shout, one pressed a device to his neck. Everything went black. When Jake woke up, he was no longer on the skyport. He was inside a cold, metallic room. The lights were dim. The walls looked old and cracked. A strange hum filled the air. He sat up slowly, his head spinning. A voice came from a speaker above. "You are on an old Ankaran transport station, hidden, forgotten. No one will find you." Jake stood up. "Who are you?" The door opened. A tall figure stepped inside. Kyle Voss, the same one who had challenged him during the trial. "You should have walked away," Kyle said calmly. "Now, we will break the bond before it fully forms." Jake stared at him. "You kidnapped me because of a joke I made weeks ago?" Kale's eyes flashed. "You represent weakness. A human should not hold the bond of night. Virith belongs to tradition, not to Earth." Jake crossed his arms. "I don't own Virith, and she doesn't belong to anyone. She chose me." Kyle's voice grew cold. "That is what we will erase." Back on the skyport, Virith stood in the main council hall. Her eyes were sharper than ever, and her voice was like steel. "Jake is missing," she said. "Taken by the Bloodless." Tharn Oral, the council leader, looked troubled. "We will search," Virith cut him off. "I will go myself, and I will bring him back." Tharn hesitated. "It may be dangerous. This could lead to conflict." Virith nodded. "Then let them know what conflict feels like." She turned and walked out. Her guards followed quickly. Jake sat in the cold cell. His hands were bound by energy cuffs, but his mind was still sharp. He remembered something Virith once said. "Even in silence the bond grows." He closed his eyes, focused. He thought of her voice, her presence, her calm strength, and far away, flying through space in her ship, Virith felt it. She opened her eyes. "He is alive, and he is close." Kale entered the cell again. "It is time," he said. "We will remove the trace of the bond from your mind. You will forget her." Jake stared at him. "You're afraid, aren't you?" Kyle frowned. "Afraid?" Jake nodded. "Yeah. You're scared that if this works, if a human and an Ankaran truly bond, it means your way isn't the only way." Kyle stepped forward. Silence. But before he could speak again, the wall behind him exploded in a flash of red light. Smoke filled the room. Guards shouted. And then she walked in. Virith, eyes glowing, cloak flying like shadow. She moved fast. Her hands formed a sign, and 2 guards fell into sleep with a simple pulse of energy. Kale turned. "Virith!" But she didn't stop. She reached Jake, broke his cuffs with one touch of her bracelet, and stood between him and Kale. Jake rubbed his wrists. "You came." "I will always come," she said. Kale drew a dark crystal weapon. "You—" "Shame your house." Virith looked at him. "No, I honor it by choosing truth." They clashed, but not for long. Virith was faster, smarter, stronger. She didn't strike to harm, only to stop. Kale fell, unconscious. Jake looked at her, stunned. "Remind me never to make you angry." Virith turned to him. "Only if you promise not to get captured again." He grinned. Deal. Back on the skyport, the council reviewed the attack. The Bloodless Court had broken galactic law. They had attacked a chosen bondmate. Their actions were clear betrayal. Tharn Oral made it official. The Bloodless Court is now marked as a rogue group. Their actions do not represent the Ankaran people. Peace was restored, for now. That night, Jake and Virith stood once more, in the garden dome. Jake looked at her and asked quietly, "Do you still want to go through with the bonding? After everything?" Virith looked at him. "Yes, more than ever." Jake reached out his hand. "Then let's finish what we started." She took it. Above them, stars sparkled like distant promises. The garden dome on the skyport was quiet. The stars above blinked gently, and soft light flowed through the tall glass windows. The air was cool, and everything felt calm. Jake Callahan stood beside Virith Noctar, holding her hand. They had been through many things together, strange trials, hidden enemies, a kidnapping, and now, the moment that would join their lives forever. "I never imagined my life would end up like this," Jake said softly. Virith looked at him. "You imagined 1,000 things. But not this?" Jake laughed. "Maybe I imagined falling in love. I just didn't think it would be with someone from another planet." Virith's eyes glowed gently. "Nor did I imagine falling for someone who fixes wires and makes strange jokes about pizza." They both smiled. The bonding ceremony was held in the Galactic Hall of Bonds, a floating structure just above Earth's orbit. It was an ancient place, shaped like a silver ring, with a view of Earth on one side and the stars on the other. Inside, the hall was quiet and grand. The floor shone like glass, and symbols of many worlds were carved into the walls. A circle of witnesses stood around Jake and Virith, humans, Anchorans, and leaders from across the galaxy. A peaceful hum filled the air as the bonding priest stepped forward. The priest was not from Earth or Anchoran space. They belonged to a race called the Ura, known for guiding interspecies unions for thousands of years. The Ura priest floated slightly above the ground, their long arms raised. Today, they said, "Two souls join, not by force, not by politics, but by choice." Jake looked at Virith. She was dressed in a robe made of star-colored cloth that shifted colors gently, silver, blue, and deep black. Around her neck, she wore the bloodstone of unity, a jewel that had belonged to her family for generations. Jake wore a suit, a simple one, clean, dark blue, with a small Earth badge on the left side. He had wanted to wear sneakers, too, but Virith convinced him otherwise. "Do you, Jake Callahan," the priest asked, "choose to walk the path of bond with Virith Noctar, through peace and struggle, in light and in shadow?" Jake took a breath. "I do." The priest turned to Virith. "Do you, Virith Noctar of House Umbra, choose to share your strength, your future, and your name with this human?" Virith nodded slowly. "I do." The priest raised a glowing crystal between them. "Then let the stars witness. Let the galaxies remember. This bond is true." The crystal flashed, and a soft light surrounded Jake and Virith. It was warm, like standing in sunlight on a winter day. The bond was now complete. The crowd clapped, some with hands, some with wings, some with quiet chirps or soft lights. The galaxy had a new couple. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Tables floated gently around the hall, filled with food from many worlds. Drinks bubbled in tall glasses. Music played from alien instruments that sounded like soft winds and glowing chimes. Jake took a sip of something purple. "Tastes like blueberry soda and sunlight." Virith tasted it too. "Strange, but pleasant." A group of reporters floated. "Over. Jake, Virith, what are your plans now?" one asked. "Will you live on Earth or Anchoran space?" Jake grinned. "We're still figuring it out. Maybe we'll take turns. 1 week in the stars, 1 week with coffee shops," Virith added. "Our bond is strong. Our path can cross both worlds." Another reporter asked, "What do you want to tell others who are unsure about bonds between different species?" Jake looked at Virith. Then he said, "Love doesn't always follow rules. Sometimes it just shows up when you yell something silly into the sky." The crowd laughed. Later that night, Jake and Virith stood on a quiet balcony. Earth spun slowly below. The moon glowed softly in the distance. "It's funny," Jake said. "The first time I saw you, I thought you were going to arrest me." Virith looked amused. "And I thought you were louder than I expected." Jake chuckled. "Do you think this will work? Us, I mean." Virith turned to face him fully. "We are already working, Jake. We listen. We learn. We stand by each other. That is enough." Jake smiled. "Yeah, you're right. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Vareth said quietly, "Would you like to choose a home? Together?" Jake thought for a moment. "Somewhere with stars, and a kitchen, and a window we can look out of." "That can be arranged," she replied. On Earth, millions watched the news of the bonding. Children drew pictures of Vireth and Jake. Artists wrote songs and poems. Some people argued, others celebrated. But slowly, something began to change. More. Planets opened talks with Earth. Trade, culture, and science began to grow. The bond between Jake and Vareth had become more than just a love story. It was a bridge between two worlds. Far away, in a hidden cave on a quiet moon, the last members of the bloodless court sat in silence. Their plans had failed. The bond had happened. One of them stood. "Do we try again?" The oldest among them shook his head. "No, the stars have spoken." And with that, the bloodless court faded into the dark. Back on the skyport, Jake opened a small box he had been hiding. Inside was a simple ring, one he made himself from earth metal and a tiny sliver of an old Ankaran stone Vareth had given him. "I know we already did the big bonding thing," he said, "but this is something I wanted to give you personally." Vireth looked at the ring. She took it gently, slid it onto her finger, and said, "It is perfect." Jake took her hand. "So," he asked, "what now?" Vireth looked at the stars. "Now, we begin." And so they did. A human, an alien, two hearts, one bond. Not by accident anymore, but by choice, till stars do us part.